Our reading today comes from Clint Smith. This was published in 2019. It's When People Say We Have Made It Through Worse Before. All I hear is the wind slapping against the gravestones of those who did not make it, those who did not survive to see the confetti fall from the sky, those who did not live to watch the parade roll down the street. I have grown accustomed to a lifetime of aphorisms meant to assuage my fears, pithy sayings meant to convey that everything ends up fine in the end. There is no solace in rearranging language to make a different word tell the same lie. Sometimes the moral arc of the universe does not bend in a direction that will comfort us. Sometimes it bends in ways we don't expect, and there are people who fall off in the process. Please, dear reader, do not say I am hopeless. I believe there is a better future to fight for. I simply accept the possibility that I may not live to see it. I've grown wary of telling myself lies that I might one day begin to believe. We are not all left standing after the war has ended. Some of us have become ghosts by the time the dust has settled. In 2013, the Supreme Court issued a ruling on Shelby v. Holder, a case that challenged the Voting Rights Act pre-clearance requirement for certain jurisdictions. That provision, Section 4B, was put in place for areas in the South that had histories of racial discrimination in voting to prevent that practice from continuing. 4B had led to increases in more proportionate representation based on race and increased voter turnout based on race. Shelby v. Holder overturned the need for this provision to continue to be required. On April 29th, the Supreme Court issued a ruling on Louisiana v. Calais, which addressed Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. This section has been used to ensure so-called minority voters are treated fairly in redistricting. The Supreme Court voted for color blindness, saying that race could not be a factor in redistricting. I'm going to have trouble with it. I had trouble with it all first service. Redistricting. And I use it like 40 times. Saying that race could not be a factor in redistricting, but redistricting on the basis of political party was acceptable. Redistricting based on political party isn't great, regardless of the political party one is affiliated with. It's how we've been getting the very weirdly shaped districts that we're now a part of. But it's more problematic when we consider what Dr. Jamar Tisby says, that currently, and has been the case for at least 2 generations, political party is a proxy for race. People of color decidedly vote more for one party than the other. And so the suggestion of color blindness comes off as dishonest. With the overturning of these 2 elements of the Voting Rights Act, the VRA has essentially been rendered powerless. This month, our theme is Flourishing Together, and I know that Juneteenth is meant to be a day of celebration, but I cannot help but keep wondering, how? We cannot flourish together when some, even many of us, are not flourishing, and we are not. And some of this is because I am white and look out at the world and see so much broken and pained and hurting and honestly really terrible. And my heart aches. But also I know more than a little of that is because of whiteness. And that hurts my heart more. And Black joy exists in spite of all the ways whiteness tries to crush it and prevent it. Otherwise, it would probably still be many lifetimes before Black folks had a chance or reason to celebrate. And what kind of life is that? Still, earlier this week, now 19-year-old Carmelo Anthony was convicted by an all-white jury of murdering another high school student 2 years ago, and he was tried as an adult. Regardless of the facts of the case, Anthony had little chance for leniency because racism is so prevalent in America. If we doubt it, let's think back to 2020 and Kyle Rittenhouse, who shot and killed 2 people and was acquitted. More and more, I find myself wondering how to feel about being a caring person in America. I take comfort in knowing that more are aware of what is happening and finding ways to bring a fairer world into being, somehow. Back on September 22nd, 1862, President Abraham Lincoln delivered the barely 700-word Emancipation Proclamation to go into effect on January 1st, 1863. Even in extending freedom in the midst of a civil war, time had to be allowed for people to adjust to the idea and allow those who enslaved people to benefit from one last harvest. Freedom arrived in stages, not at once. Slavery was not formally abolished until December of 1865 and the passage of the 13th Amendment. For those who were enslaved in Confederate-held states, not border states in the fight, not states where the Union had gained control, they waited that watch night, December 31st, 1862, and prayed and hoped that emancipation would come that morning, and it did. Arkansas, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and parts of Virginia and Louisiana were included under the proclamation. But freedom for some was delayed, denied even longer. Those enslaved in Texas were not freed, but remained enslaved until the arrival of Major General Gordon Granger in Galveston. He was there to ensure emancipation and read the orders on June 19, 1865, 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect. That day when news broke in Galveston that the enslaved people were free, long since as it was, but free now as witnessed in public, the day was one of celebration, and the following year, commemorations were held for what has variously been called Emancipation Day, Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, and Juneteenth. Freedom from enslavement was absolutely something to rejoice about, even if it left many questions unanswered. Formerly enslaved people had no property, after all, no money, and their families were ripped apart. And still, immediately, we get the glimmer of something different being possible. As the website of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture noted a few years ago, the post-emancipation period, known as Reconstruction from 1865 to 1877, marked an era of great hope, uncertainty, and struggle for the nation as a whole. Formerly enslaved people immediately sought to reunify families, establish schools, run for political office, push radical legislation, and even sue slaveholders for compensation. Given the 200-plus years of enslavement, such changes were nothing short of amazing. Not even a generation out of slavery, African Americans were inspired and empowered to transform their lives and their country. With abandon, they were making a way out of nowhere, as later womanist theologians would say. Juneteenth began in Texas and traveled the country as former enslaved people migrated away. The popularity of Juneteenth as a public event has ebbed and flowed over time. Not, to be clear, that it disappeared or wasn't recognized year after year, only that recognition as a public event or practice changed at different times. Black folks would regularly celebrate Juneteenth with their family, close friends, churches, sometimes in small community gatherings. For a time, this was dictated heavily by the Black codes, which preceded Jim Crow, which also had a role, of course. This was in part out of privacy and in part because of the restrictions of Black folks or on Black folks in public life, not being permitted to be in parks, public spaces, movie theaters, amusement parks, and so on. Stories were shared and told among the celebrations, and over the years, this became an important feature of Juneteenth gatherings. Storytelling is not just a way to tell the truth or to entertain, but also to restore agency. By the 1900s, it was a common practice for elders to tell their stories so that all could remember where they came from. But I very much believe that the purpose was more than that, as if not only to tell their stories, but as a way to recenter narratives told on the people who were impacted. To take what had been told only one way and to offer different perspectives, not just for the sake of giving a different view, but as a way to make the words, the names, the dates, into lived experiences, into the stories of people's lives, to make them real. This is the reason that Juneteenth remains so vital to the Black community. It assures Black folks telling Black folk stories. It values storytelling as a way of connecting the past to the present and the present to the future, because we need to know the past to know who we have been, to have an idea of where we want to go. Remembering the past is a way to fertilize ground for dreaming of the future and the possibilities of the present. And so there have been resurgences in Juneteenth celebrations during the civil rights and Black empowerment movements, publicly blessed and returned to the fore in 1968 by Coretta Scott King. Texas made Juneteenth a state holiday in 1980, again placing it squarely in the public. After the Rodney King beatings and LA riots, Juneteenth was celebrated again as Black folks reflected on the ideas of freedom, civil rights, and the value of life, with questions about Black liberty and Black justice denied once again. The murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many others that led to the protests in 2020 also reinvigorated public Juneteenth celebrations, and the following year saw the holiday recognized federally. Over time, Juneteenth has become a day that encapsulates so much of Black history in the Americas, recognizing enslavement and freedom, past and future, pain and hope, sorrow and joy, how far we have come and how very far we have yet to go. Questions that lie on each of our hearts in our own ways, but all living side by side. Justice for the past can only be found in our present and our future. If you are white like me, our work is not in celebrating Juneteenth, but in supporting Black folks in making celebrations possible. Our work is in paying reparations that the government and corporations and others will never pay. It is a debt that cannot be repaid, but it is our work to strive for anyway. Reparations are a spiritual practice. Our work is to find ways to support Black imaginations, creativity, excellence, futures, and presence, as well as joy and rest. Our work all together is to find a way to live among the rubble of the people we have been, as a way to help us all dream about what may yet be, and striving with our work and our love to make it real. We plumb the depths of history for stories of resilience and stories of witness. We must wonder about what legacies we are living now. As we face the future, are we to be those who delay and deny, or those who rise and resist? May we focus ourselves on liberation and find our way together. If you would please rise and lift your voice in song with me for our closing hymn, I Wish I Knew How.